Sometimes you just want to watch the world burn. I mean, it is the dead of summer right now, and it is also scorcher out there, so why not take some of that heat into the Fallout universe and have some fun doing the character focus playthrough in the meantime. So I thought, why not? Let's set the Commonwealth on fire, as today we will attempt to beat Fallout 4 as the Pyro from Team Fortress 2. I was going to say hashtag fix TF2, but Valve has put in some effort recently in stopping some of the bot problem. Hopefully a long-term solution will be found here pretty soon. As to the run at hand, rules are going to be rather straightforward today. For my weapon, I can only use flamethrowers, or to be exact, the flamer, and I guess the heavy incinerator. You could point out that the Pyro has access to shotguns and fire axes in the sort, but I want to use the flamer today because I've never used the weapon before, despite my love for energy weapons. As for the attire, the closest one I could find for an outfit without going to mods is the Nuka World jumpsuit. Problem is that the clothing can only be found by doing Cappy and a Haystack quest, and I don't fancy venturing out to Nuka World fighting Gator Claws at level 3 in my tidy whities, so I will just give myself the outfit. I mean, it has next to no protection as it is, so I don't see the harm done. Also, can't forget the gas mask and goggles, and I'm allowing myself any hat. It's almost the core of the TF2 experience. As for the bonus objectives today, since I feel like doing some stuff on the side and not just rushing the ending, I'll make myself beat Pyro from the Creation Club and also clear out the Forge, but that won't be until very late in the run. I'll probably get distracted throughout the playthrough, so I guess time to get burning. So, starting out the run, I just reloaded save right at the exit to the vault since I have proved that you can escape the vault without hurting any of the rad roaches. Plus, it is quite a long intro section, and there's only so many times I can say, and then the serial killer shot my wife. As for the special stats, I went with a 5 in strength for the heavy gunner perk, high perception and endurance for refractor and survival, and the usuals in the other stats. As for what I look like, don't. Nobody needs to know who the Pyro is underneath the mask. When I arrived on the overworld, I gave myself the Nuka World jumpsuit so I at least looked somewhat the part, then ran right to Sanctuary. I started scrapping everything that isn't nailed down for parts, along with bumping up my endurance to take more hits. Also during my scrapping, I led Bloatflies to Codsworth so he can chop him down to size. Then I do my usual posting until I hit level 2 for the Orph perk, then head down the road a bit. I wandered to the east a bit until I entered Concord. Here I let Preston clear out the streets of its raider problem so I can come in like the scavenger I am and loot the bodies. I am going to need a lot of caps, especially if I need to buy a flamer. I ignored Preston and continued down the road a bit, seeing if Carla had anything, but she is fresh out, so I continued down the road a bit, ignoring Wolfgang's stick up for now. Further on south, I decided to stand around a bit and watch as Dance tried to clear out the ghouls. Seems like the toasters broke today as he kept on going down so the ghouls went after me. And seems today they were also able to understand how to get around fencing and try to claw at me, but I was able to kite them around just long enough for Dance to resume fire. After repeating the song and dance for a little bit, eventually Dance congratulates me by doing absolutely nothing and invites me inside the police station where I can loot anything not nailed down for some more caps. After that, I traveled east a little bit until I got to Suggs. Sometimes Suggs tells stuff about the suggested level pool, but today he wasn't feeling up to it. In the meantime, I lured raiders right to Suggs so he can pop off their heads so I can loot their corpses for more pocket change. I was able to get an assault mask in this, but it isn't the required gas mask. Well, there are plenty more vendors in the Commonwealth, so I continued on south to Diamond City, avoiding getting my tush pinched by Mirelurks. Outside of Diamond City, I watched as the Diamond City police have a shootout with a pack of super mutants, so in my small mind, free stuff to loot. Eventually, the military police was able to clear out the super mutant problem, and I go in to loot the remains. However, I get a little overzealous and lost my footing. Second go around, I was much more cautious with my surroundings and got some stuff to sell at Diamond City. Before entering the city, I found Cricket. She does sell some flamer fuel, but no flamer sadly, so into the city I go. So I had zero luck with getting flamer stuff. I go around to every vendor in the city and not a single vendor had either flamer or fuel, so I left Diamond City to head to Good Neighbor. On my way there, I learned the police really don't care that a pack of angry dogs was able to bite at me, and in fact took out a few of the turrets outside before they realized what was going on. Otherwise, I continued on my merry way, marking a few locations for later before heading into Good Neighbor. Here I watched a live shanking from Hancock and proceeded to steal a fat man and other valuables to sell for later. As for my purchasing, I did not find a single flamer, but I did find a gas mask for my ensemble. Well, I'm now out of every vendor that I can think of that could sell the flamer. Well, there are probably a few more out there, but given that I'm level 4 right now, and the flamer fuel starts entering the pool at level 10 normally, so I guess at this point, time to head somewhere with a guaranteed spawn. A couple places are in the far northeastern part of the map, so I left from Concord to head there. On my journey out east, there really wasn't much going on. I mean, sure, a settler was barraged by some mole rats, and I also had to navigate dangerously close to a hospital that does have a flamer in it, along with a few super mutant running backs, so I didn't bother there and continued out east. I did have to carefully avoid some rat scorpions, but eventually I made it to Country Crossing. In the big domes to the south of there's a guaranteed flamer spawn, just have to avoid some blood bugs. I get my weapon, but I forgot to purchase some fuel, so I have to let the local settlers take care of my problems. Back in Diamond City, I bonked Kyle so the aimbots can finish off the job, then I looked around for Cricket for some fuel. Yeah, flamer fuel is really hard to come by, but since I love cheese, well, more of a quality of life so the run is in before Halloween, I returned to Sanctuary and proceeded to make the item duplication exploit contraption. I bring along Dog and have him fetch balls of fire. I'm going to need a lot of flamer fuel because the weapon literally burns through ammo like it's nothing. While I was in Sanctuary, I upgraded the flamer. You can fully deck it out without any perks. The only thing to remember is to put the long barrel on last for maximum optimization. Once I was happy with my kit, I decided to get my defenses sorted. Sure, I am locked into clothing that has no defenses, but there is a workaround for that, so I guess time to start helping out the railroad. Along the way there, I began roasting at whoever came my way. Inside of the church, I roasted the ghouls into the afterlife and hacked into the railroad HQ, and they were quite surprised that nobody was able to get in with dumb luck. Also, the railroad HQ is locked tight right now, so I can't get in. I talked to Deacon and departed back to Concord. Back at the museum, I decided why not? I could help out Preston with some raiders for some experience. I run through the insides of the museum burning away at history, turning raiders into my average barbecue, and getting the perception bobblehead. In fact, this is the real reason why I went inside, but I figured why not, I could have some grilled lizard on the side. I ran through the outsides of Concord burning alive any raider that came my way until the Deathclaw came out. I maintained the high ground burning alive anyone who came too close. Truth be told, the Deathclaw did most of the work, sending one raider into the afterlife. Eventually I toasted the lizard and blew up the truck and took some damage in the process. I'm not very smart, okay? I then told Preston I caused a 5-alarm fire and the town was cleared of any hostiles. I returned to Sanctuary and get some experience for helping out Preston, and now to ignore him for the rest of the run. I traded with Trash Can Carla. I then walked south a bit until I came to the diner, where I roasted Wolfgang alive. I traded with Trudy for stuff, then killed both her and Patrick so I can loot the place for all it's worth. After that, I continued south a little bit further until I rendezvoused with Deacon. We burned some ghouls, did covert ops, then crawled into the sewers. Heading into the sewers, I was pretty nervous because I have no energy resistance and I have a lot of sins to contend with. A good offense is a good defense, as they say, and I proceeded to burn through the synths before they could burn through my health. And often I could get the drop in on them before they even knew what was happening. Things got a little dicey in the switchboard, mostly wide open area when I'm limited in my range, but eventually they all went down. Then things were interesting when I decided to take a nap to heal. Deacon decided to warp ahead of me. I continued on my merry way through the place until the synths were all cleared out. I eventually found Deacon in the very last room. I accidentally burned him in a panic thinking he was a synth, but thankfully he's invincible right now. I got the prototype, and we could escape the dungeon. With more burnt synths, I returned to the railroad. While I was there on the railroad getting my next mission, I decided why not? I could take a mysterious serum from Tinker Tom, and it nearly kills me. I will remember that. But at least he sold me some flamer fuel, so at least we're even, I guess. 141 fuel won't get me very far though. Anyways, I get tasked by Desmona to escort a synth, so I walk to Bunker Hill, but not before lighting up some raiders outside. Nothing much happened during my trek to Bunker Hill, well besides getting some roasted mirelurks. I talked to Stonks to start escorting a synth, but first up I need to barbecue some raiders inside a church. During the escort I was following High Rise, and he wasn't much of a high riser today. He decided to take a very dangerous detour into a super mutant den, even took a touchdown right to the face. Yay for invincibility, I guess. He decided it is time for revenge, and charged face first into the mutant tower to live up to his name. It was quite a fun fight to the top of the place just to get rid of the mutants, kept slipping down a level a few times, plus the boss mutant did pack a bit of a punch but was burnt to cinders soon enough. Eventually High-Rise decided to cross the beam to return to street level, in one giant detour. That might be where he got his name from. During the whole fiasco, the synth we were escorting was lost, and when we made it to our destination, he was nowhere to be found. But mission was a success! Somehow. I then returned to Carrington and got my reward. The next part of the prerequisite to ballistics is finding a new safe house, presumably because High-Rise lost a synth during the escort. So why not build a safe house in the middle of nowhere far away from everything? On my way there I found a stray wounded dog I never knew was in the game. I named her Sparky, mildly disturbing pet, and I thought she would be a follower, but I never see Sparky again for the rest of the run. I never even knew this event was in the game. Anyways, I cleared out Sunshine Tidings easily enough, got some grilled ghouls in the process before I crafted a couple of turrets. I then returned to Pam for the final prerequisite before I got defense, and that is getting up to a high-rise. No, not that high-rise. On my journey there I get a little lost. And by lost, I mean I went up the completely wrong building, so I have to crawl down and go up a different building. I just love downtown Boston. Still better than New York. Eventually I was able to enter the right building, open the fake door, then return to the railroad. Here Pam congratulates me for all of my efforts. I then find Drummer Boy napping with Tom, and Tinker Tom lets me in on the secrets of ballistic fiber, which I go ahead and craft. It is a very substantial upgrade over my regular armor, like it gives really good defenses. With everything done with the railroad I wish to do, I give them my thanks by showering them with lollipops and rainbows and everything else fun and nice. With the railroad in a much happier place, I figured now is a good time to take care of the Brotherhood. Back at the police station, I talked to Dance and proceeded to ArcJet. I figured it is a good way to gauge my defenses at this point in the game, and during the firefight with some bandits, yeah, they were all burnt to a solid crisp. And really that was the story until ArcJet. Inside the dungeon, I opened fire on all the Sins and their circuit boards were burnt to a crisp. And plus, I'm not taking very much damage at all, so my bad stress levels were alleviated. Abandoning common sense, I leave the heavy behind and cleared ArcJet all by myself. As for the engine room, instead of powering up the engines, I would do the incinerating myself. Sure, I do take a bit of damage, but all the Sins were met with my burning rage and all went down with ease. I took this burning bloodlust into the final room and got the transmitter. I then talked to Dance, get an idiot savant level up, then return to Sanctuary to do more duping. Ready as I can be, I decided to have a go at Swan, and I will just play out the entire fight. With the behemoth roasted to a nice crisp, I entered Park Street Station. With a third level of ballistic weave, the Triggerman submachine guns were of no concern, and they all went down to my burning desires. The only sucky part is my limited range, but I have the defenses now to get me to my enemy. Somehow I was able to open the vault without plugging in my Pip-Boy. As for the vault itself, it was a firing range. Every Triggerman within my range was set on fire. As for Dino, I thought I could use some VATS since I haven't used it all on the run, but I run into a little glitch doing this where I would not consume any ammo or do any damage to Dino. Eventually the problem fixes itself when I gun bash, and the game remembered that fire hurts. I was able to rescue my detective, and as soon as the Triggermen entered the room, I let loose my hellfire and they were burnt into a crisp. Same held true for everyone else on my way out. One Triggerman didn't want anything to do with me and was running straight into a wall. He felt my fiery wrath all the same. As for Skinny Malone, I let loose my flames of retribution and the afterburn was able to finish off the entire party with relative ease, and after that we left the vault to return to Diamond City. Nick met the Pyro, we rummaged through the cereal house, then get the help of my item duper to track down the expired cereal. On my way to Fort Hagen, I decided to have some fun at the Federal Ration stockpile, mostly more supplies to get me through the rest of the run. Here I roasted the raiders inside and out, nothing really much to note, just some intro footage until I got to Red. She was the color of fires, which she was burnt to cinders, and I could claim the copious amounts of healing down here, which I never end up using. I began to lose a bit of focus here on for much of the run. After leaving through the church, I headed south, getting some roasted Yao Guai meat for later, then began crawling up Fort Strong. Things are really interesting here because the super mutant linebacker somehow spiked himself up to the roof and blew up the turret up here. After that confusion, I entered Fort Hagen. The Sins here stood no chance of stopping this madman. Here I started matching the fire button. No idea if it's any more effective than holding down the fire button, but results get results. The first floor was cleared out with relative ease, and really there wasn't much to note heading further down through the basement levels. Just more toasters meeting my fiery wrath. During the plunge I do grab the energy weapon bobblehead because it works super well for my build, I think. Really throughout the entire dungeon crawl, nothing much was a threat except for the tourists before Kellogg for some reason. As for the cereal man, I first focused on the ads, then blasted at Kellogg. Sure, he went invisible, but it's really easy to see when someone is on fire. I kept holding down left mouse button until the man was burned to a crisp, then I continued to burn him down for revenge. After he was reduced to ashes, I left the fort, and I saw the route I'll be taking for the rest of the run move in. I mean, the only faction I haven't sided with, considering how often I snub them off. Back in Diamond City, I talked to Nick and Piper about my findings and traveled back to Good Neighbor. Here I lived the good old days before the Pyro was nerfed, then began the crawl to the Glowing Sea. On a normal playthrough, I say, and the trip to the Glowing Sea was uneventful as ever. Yeah, not today. I picked the worst possible path heading south from Fort Hagen. On my way to the sea, I first came across a shack with a quarterback that got too close for spiking distance, but a few flames were able to ignite the payload. And really the rest of the cleanout wasn't that bad, except this was the first of, might I add, several Deathclaw encounters on my way to the glowing sea. Thankfully it goes down with relative ease and I can loot a lone rat away. Totally worth it. Not even 30 seconds later south, near a car lot, I came across another Deathclaw, but I was able to avoid any damage on my way. And then another Deathclaw a little bit more south and I was picked up, but thankfully the lizard put me down and continued the barbecue. Into the glowing sea itself, you guessed it, more Deathclaws. At least they're still pretty easy to avoid. As for the glowing sea proper, I just pointed in a general direction and roasted alive whatever poor creature came across my way. Oh yeah, 2 more Deathclaws and a legendary rat scorpion hunter along the way. And plus a lot of bugs here, however they are bug types and they're weak to my flamethrower. I marked a couple locations for later like Sentinel Site, then entered Virgil's cave so I can start green tech. You know, there is something very satisfying about running through green tech with my fiery ordnance and roasting the gunners alive. I was sprinting through the whole place at a breakneck pace so fast, I don't think the gunners even registered my presence until they were well done. I will say I was having a blast going through here. I was even able to get a jump on the missile launcher gunner and avoided a missile to the torso. As for the rest of the place, it was one giant roast until I got to the courser. Despite their excessive need to be invisible, sorry to break it to you, but flames are visible. So I just kept my torch focused on the synth and he went down with relative ease. With my business done with green tech, I returned to the Lollipop Land and decoded the courser chip, then finished my business with Virgil. So at this point, time to get the Brotherhood route in progress and not abandon them this time, as usual. I returned to the police station and got a ride up to the Pridwin, ignored the pointless speech with Maxim, and got my grand tour of the ship of Radiant Quest I will ignore. With the easy quest done, I talked to Maxim to get started on tackling Fort Strong, purifying the super mutants from the earth. So I didn't really have a plan for Fort Strong. Open fire and hope for the best. Problem is that somehow a giant behemoth snuck up on me and took off half of my health. How did this thing sneak up on me? I have no idea. Thankfully the giant doesn't have much for pathfinding, and I was able to cut it around the center building and burning it to a crisp. Rest of the outside goes down without much fuss thankfully. As for the interior, the Flames of Retribution was able to put down the mutants. As for the basement, I wanted to play things safe for the missile launcher, so I brought the hounds upstairs where I lit them up. There was also a legendary butcher down here, but he went down with relative ease. Dumb and me thought it would be a wonderful idea to jump onto a missile, but I was able to clear out the mutants with ease. Eventually the downstairs was all cleared out, and mission complete. Next up for the Brotherhood is Orpheolus infiltrating the Institute, and not abandoning them. Before I started building, I went around refueling my ammo, dupe notwithstanding, and buying a magnet also for later so I can skip a Radiant Quest. Back at the airport I built all the necessary parts needed, get my instructions from Maxim, then get warped inside the Institute where I started by bugging up the place. As for Father, the urge was there to light him up, but I resisted, mostly because I wanted to get Dr. Lee's help. When I tried to convince her back, I'm not very charismatic, especially when I only speak in so I have to find out what happened to Dr. Virgil before he went green with envy. Truth be told, I've never done this part of the quest before since my characters have always had high charisma from completion, so this will be fun. As for the FEV lab, sure there were a lot of turrets down here, but my line of fire was enough to put them down. The Assaultron though was a bit tricky because they have blenders for hands and can interrupt my firing. Thankfully their circuit boards is combustible, and I was able to get through the place relatively unharmed and get the necessary information so that way Lee can come back to the Brotherhood. With that mission done, next up is the big part of the Brotherhood's quest line, and that is rebuilding Fallout 3's fan service instead of making Fallout 3 stable on modern PCs and not crash every 30 seconds. The first mission has you get some high-powered magnets, which I've already done, so the joints are back online. Next up is heading to Sentinel Site. Of course the location needed to get there was as far away as possible from all my locations, so I have to hoof it there. As soon as I finished my fast travel, I had to quickly sack a super mutant before I got a friendly hug, and then I cleared out the mini dungeon nearby for all the stuff I don't really need. And at this point I was on a rampage heading to the south, making my knight comrades proud by going after the super mutants. With my Hellfire, I was going to clear out the Coast Guard pier with relative ease, getting a jump on a nuke, along with burning some ghouls, and even added another Deathclaw to my kill counter. I then accidentally wandered into the scrap palace where I scrapped the mutants here, getting some friendly fire in the process, and I had some help taking down a butcher. After enough detouring I was able to talk to Halen, so that way the GPS can pick up some nukes. I warped to Sentinel Site and began clearing out the dungeon, mostly getting lost in the process because I can never remember how this place goes. Eventually, I found my way to the bottom where I began roasting the ghouls to a fine char, then cleared out the tunnels on my way through, spawn camping the ghouls as they crawled through the walls. As for the Child of Adam near the end, I didn't engage in dialogue. Instead, a hard focus on the Assaultron here so I don't get a beam to the face, and it goes down rather easily, and the child went down in the crossfire. I planted the GPS and warped out of the dungeon back to the Pridwin. When I got back, I got scolded by Maxim that the toaster got out of the kitchen and I have to give chase after him. At this point, I decided to take care of my side objectives because both are in the neighborhood. Starting from Country Crossing, I just hiked my way east until I got to Finch Farms, but not before watching a shootout between mutants and vertibirds. First up in the area, I was going to clear out the forge. So the forge here do hit somewhat hard, but then again this area is a high-leveled area, so it's to be expected. The battle was more one-sided. As well, they do carry flamers. I have superior firepower, quite literally, and the outside party goes down with relative ease. Same holds true for the inside. Should have left it to a professional. I did get a little lost on the inside because I can never remember how to navigate the place. As for the eastern half, there was a Creation Club mission here to claim a heavy incinerator, which isn't really outside the rules set, even kill the supposed upgraded forge involved here, but when I tried to cross into the lava, I immediately spontaneously combusted from the heat, so getting the item requires some special Creation Club questing to get, except I really can't do it because I don't have any lockpicking skills, plus I will have to use Pyro armor, something that really doesn't fit in with the rule set, and plus I only have an hour left of the run anyways. And I also have a plan B to sidestep this entire fiasco, so I just passed it up and finished the dungeon. Inside the final room of the forge, I didn't even want to listen to the speech here. I just lit the place on fire, even killing Jake in the process. As for Slag, sure he does have a skull next to his name, but that really means nothing in the grand scheme of things, and I burnt him to ashes. As for the bobblehead you can find in this room, I couldn't find it, must have got lost in the explosion somewhere. Plus, I don't really need it for the run, so I just say hell with it. Tossed the prisoner into the lava, then left the place. I then told Abe about his son's passing, ashes to ashes, dust to dust or something, got some experience, then went towards listening post Bravo. Along the way there is my sworn enemy Pyro. We're of opposite teams, plus he is in the pay-to-win Hellfire armor, plus he has his own flamer, but he is also a fraud so he went down. Really easily if I might add. I took his armor so I can lure some Enclave to me. After that I went up the road like 10 meters into the listening post to find Dance in the basement. I let him mutter his final words, then fried his circuits. At this point, I wanted to get a heavy incinerator, so I went with plan B. I returned to the police station, and if you remember from the Ant Run, I was ambushed and killed by Enclave here, so I thought I could have some revenge. It makes a load of a difference being level 23 at this point, and having good defense and mobility. The soldiers went down with relative ease, and I could claim the heavy incinerator for my own. And in my boredom, I decided to wander around the northwestern side of the map and I found Carhenge along with another behemoth. I tested out the heavy incinerator. I mean, sure it does work, might be a considerable upgrade over my flamer, but I decided to finish the run with the flamer and burn the abomination into cinders. I returned to the Brotherhood and began the next mission. Next up is clearing out the railroad, which I've already done, but I forgot about Pam, so I had to return to fetch the robot. I encountered some more agents along the way, and not wanting to have my job be half finished, I bestowed upon them a rainbow gun of pain, and eventually I blew open the door to the HQ, and abducted Pam to our cause. With that mission done, all that is left before prime time is mass fusion. So when flying on in, I couldn't just use the minigun, so I had to wait for my pilot to stop flying circles around the place so I could land and put my flamethrower to good use. Sure, there were a lot of synths, but the powers of fire were able to snuff out their wiring. I also found a very dangerous looking rolling pin on one of the synths. Once the upper floors were dealt with, I took a leap of faith down to Goodneighbor so I can skip the elevator ride. As for the lower floors, even though I skipped the elevator, I decided why not, I could kill all the synths here. Did I need to? Obviously not. And what's even more confusing is climbing the entire place just for the strength bobblehead, which I really didn't need because I'm not using strength at this point, but at this point I stopped questioning my insanity. Once that was all done, I got my bobblehead, then went down into the basement. Since I am locked into my outfit, I can't put on my Starfit attire, so I had to be quick in the agitator. I embraced the microwave and got my agitator, then booked it right out of there. After that began the fight out of the building. I took on the sentry bot, which did pack quite a bit of a punch at first, but Ingram was able to hold on to its attention long enough and it goes down relatively easily in a blaze of glory. Same held true for the Assaultrons. Guess the Steel types really don't want to play with Fire types today. Before returning to the Pridwin, I fought the synths down here for meaningless experience. I mean, we're at endgame right now, so experience really doesn't matter, but oh well. Once the robots were all cleared out, I returned to Liberty Prime, fired up its engines, and entered Q, where I was able to quickly join a game. Now began pushing the payload into the enemy base. Well, most payload games involves the pushing team having to kill the enemy team, not the payload annihilating the competition, but oh well. Really, during the push, I really felt like a side NPC getting carried. I try to help out when I can, but between the deletion rays and nukes, Synth stood no chance. After Prime took a shortcut, I got a little more involved with the killing, burning the robots in their shells. You know, in hindsight, Liberty Prime is very terrifying and thank goodness he's on our side. Otherwise, I don't fancy what it did to a behemoth. Well, at least I toasted its toes. Outside of CIT, the map objective turned into an attack-defend map. Really, it was firing at whatever Synths decided to spawn. Honestly, with this much firepower, I felt I was not needed at all. Maxim's Gatling laser was doing most of the work. Eventually, the beams of Liberty were able to blast open the Institute entrance and we could enter inside. Really, at this point, Maxim became the main character and did most of the carrying in the final dungeon. Well, I tried to fight Synths as I could as I pushed ahead of the group. Really, the Brotherhood's nuclear option is the easiest final mission, and the Synths pose no threat whatsoever. Things were especially lively in the bioscience lab. By that, I mean burnt gorilla hair. Same held true for the central lobby. The Courser was gunned down almost immediately, and the rest of the section was pretty easy all things considered. During the excursion, I gaslit Father, then opened the way into the reactor room, but not before having more fuel and all that which I desire on the rampage. And in the final area, it was also of non-issue. One of the legendary Synths had a flamethrower, so I had to prove that I am the top Pyro once and for all. With his corpse on the floor, we easily cleared out the room, planted the bomb, told the Synth to stay in spawn, warped out of the Institute, and light the largest fireworks show in 200 years and get in some friendly fire, proving that yes, you can beat Fallout 4 as the Pyro. Well, that was a pretty fun run. In reality, doing the ammo duplication glitch was a lifesaver because fuel is pretty hard to come by, and I would have had to play more pacifist to conserve ammo, as you can unload a full clip in a few seconds. Avoiding ammo issues really helped out my quality of life, and the ballistic weaves also was another lifesaver because otherwise I would have died a lot, given no defenses otherwise. Honestly, the weave was way more powerful than I had initially thought. As for the flamer itself, it was definitely powerful in the early game, but when I got to Mass Fusion and beyond, the enemies were able to take a full clip of fuel to take down. And given how hard flamer fuel is to get in mass quantities, it would have been not as fun of an endgame. But all in all, this was a pretty fun run and I'm glad I gave the flamer a go, though I don't think I'll be using it in future runs. As for item dupes, as I said in the piggy bank video, I will just go for it only if ammo is a very bad concern and for the quality of life of the run. Though I think for my next run, I might go for a more melee focused build. Hopefully you all enjoyed this run. If you did, be sure to give a like and subscribe for more masochism. Any other ways I can torture myself, leave them down below in the comments. This has been Orpheolus, and see you all in the next time.